Little Archie, issue 144, The Magic Music. Zelda's record on music to play along with shows up, and since she's an incompetent ditz, she predictably continues that trend instead of getting to excel at something. It's just as well since Hilda's the violinist, in the 90s sitcom anyways. Hilda tells Zelda to go far away to play her music, which makes sense because she's mad, and if she's playing badly, no one would be able to focus enough to cast a spell so that they can't hear her. I guess Hilda doesn't make her a good violinist because Zelda wants to become a good violinist the real way. Sabrina feels sorry for Zelda for having her feelings hurt. Zelda goes to a haunted house because she sees a house and assumes that nobody lives there. I guess it's because it didn't have lights on and the curtains weren't drawn to hide any lights. The ghosts call a meeting because they can't stand her music playing, and Zelda's being watched in a crystal ball by Sabrina, who is smart enough to do this to check on her. She says the ghosts have voted to smash her violin. Hilda says she should have thought of that, but randomly reveals she's against violence. But she's okay with encouraging Sabrina to be bad. I guess that just has limits. Sabrina smartly tells her to use her magic to help her play good music. It makes sense that they were too miserable from the music to concentrate on thinking before, so they couldn't think of this idea until now. Hilda says that she'll have to use all her powers to do this and cast a spell while mixing up a potion. Why are the ghosts allowed on Earth? They like the sounds she's playing, even though most people wouldn't because they're sounds a ghost would somehow like, just because they're associated with ghosts trying to scare people, even though ghosts used to be people. It's more creative than her simply playing good music, but that would have made more sense. The story ends with Zelda teaching the ghosts to make those sounds with the violin. This story is about Zelda practicing her violin badly in a haunted house because she somehow assumed a house she never saw before had nobody in it. Because Hilda hurt Zelda's feelings telling her to play music somewhere else and Sabrina felt sorry for her, Sabrina cleverly thinks to check on her with a crystal ball and finds out that the ghosts plan on smashing her violin. Good thing she decided to check on her with the crystal ball instead of just warping to her. So she tells Hilda to use magic on the ghosts so that they'll hear sounds they like from the violin. I don't know why there's ghosts around, but it was creative that Zelda played music around them. Little Archie, issue 145. A real nice cookie. Zelda feels like making cookies, so she summons walking eggs and lots of milk, and somehow she summons a cow without meaning to. She levitates a bull and has the cookies fly with wings, and fills the cookie jar. Sabrina and her friends all smell the cookies because they were set down near an open window, probably only to tell Sabrina they're done faster. But she didn't anticipate her friends being there too. I guess she knew that Sabrina was out with her friends, so she couldn't warp her to her or her friends would freak out. But she always gets away with using magic around them, so she just didn't think of that. Zelda's upset at all of the cookies being eaten already, and they cleverly run out of the house. Hilda tells Zelda to relax because they can just bake some more. She says she knows the magic chance for really good cookies, which cheers Zelda up. Jughead feels bad, and reveals that some of the cookies had raisins and dates. Betty says they could buy Zelda some cookies. Sabrina feels bad for getting her friends and her in trouble, and decides to cast a spell to give Zelda lots of cookies, even though her aunts already said they were going to make more cookies in front of her. The house is overflowing with cookies, and the aunts offer them to the kids. Even the cookie jar and dinner plates became cookies, somehow. And somehow the kids decided to try to eat them. This story has Sabrina and her friends eat all the cookies Zelda just baked, and then Zelda casts a spell to summon some more, but it combines with Sabrina's spell to make the house overflow with cookies. Fortunately, the aunts are forgiving enough to let the kids have them instead of just pointing to zap the cookies away right away. The kids would get full pretty quick, so them eating the cookies would be a really slow and useless way to get rid of all of them. I like that Jughead actually felt bad for what he did, and Betty's suggestion to try and make up for it was actually followed. I don't think you can make up for homemade cookies being eaten with supermarket cookies getting bought, though. Little Archie, issue 146. One Rainy Day. Sabrina summons food because she's going on a picnic with her friends. Zelda helps pack it up with magic. For no reason, the food talks while it's going in the picnic basket, so hopefully that doesn't stay the case. Her friends show up. Sabrina tells Jughead he can't start eating until the beach, which makes sense because he'd have nothing to do after eating, and it rains. Instead of Sabrina simply making it not rain, and then magically erasing their short-term memory, she does nothing, and Betty says she'll write her pen pal. Then Sabrina annoys me by saying they could open the letters from little Archie's mailboard. Why aren't her friends confused? Why would what's supposed to be a normal, unremarkable kid in universe get all this fan mail? Why can't they just have the fan mail be answered outside of the stories? Like in every other comic, including this one. Sabrina summons the bags, and one of them asks how she did that when he should know by now. And conveniently, they all drop it right away. Which has to be because of the spell. So the rest of the story gets wasted with the characters' predictable reactions to the fan mail. Why would Archie advise everyone who's reading the comic to write to the people whose addresses were included in the panel? That's so irresponsible, they could get overwhelmed with mail from strangers. That's why I'm not showing all of the panel in these cases. Reggie thinks some jokes are funny too easily. Veronica kisses Archie's cheek, and Hilda's glad the kids are having a good time, but isn't going to tell them it stopped raining because the ants want to finish the fried chicken and potato salad on them, even though they could just summon copies of those things and send them outside. This story is about Sabrina and her friends' plans to go to the beach for a picnic getting derailed by a storm, but rather than Sabrina simply using magic to make it not rain, the story is derailed by the characters making predictable responses to fan mail they shouldn't have. This wasn't the plot. Little Archie, issue 147, The Party. Sabrina's family are sunbathing just outside their house instead of on the beach. That's a little creative. Zelda assumes she's getting a ringing in her ears when she hears the phone ring. Hilda shouldn't need to tell Sabrina that she can just use magic to make the phone fly to her. But the problem is, how is the old two-handed phone still able to work if it's all the way outside? It doesn't look like it's got a long wire attached to it connecting it to the house still. It looks like it's wireless, which witches can achieve. Sabrina says Veronica wants Sabrina's family to come to a party. Since when? Why? Apparently the lodges only hate her aunts when they're making a lot of puns. They decide to wear swanky clothes, and somehow Zelda thinks she should look like a clown. And for no reason, Sabrina tells Zelda what men wear to fancy parties, and Zelda summons a tuxedo and looks sad. Sabrina only tells her to leave out the animals that wouldn't be there either. She says they're only going to an outdoor party, so she tells her aunts to just dress like they always do. Hilda says if anyone doesn't like them, she'll give them the double whammy anyways. Good thing witches can erase memories to avoid being sued. Then Hilda shows awareness that some people don't like the color black, and somehow they decide to give themselves white witch costumes instead, when obviously pink or purple should have been what they'd go to next, and white would be the last color they'd consider. And even Sabrina gets one of those outfits when she never wears them, and somehow she's smiling about it. You'd think it occurred to at least one of them that they wouldn't be accepted in a witch outfit. It's just frustrating. I can totally understand them wearing them inside the house, but there has to be a reason that that wasn't the case in the sitcom. They fly to Veronica's house, and she says they didn't have to dress up because everyone else wore their bathing suits. So if she had just told them it was a pool party in the first place, they wouldn't have wasted all that time. This story's about Hilda making too big of a deal out of being invited to a party at a rich person's place, and her family using magic to get themselves dressed up a lot. Zelda had no excuse for doing so poorly. Veronica had no excuse for not telling Sabrina it was a pool party right away. Why did she expect them to wear bathing suits without being told to? And since when does Veronica invite Sabrina and her aunts to a party at her place? It does seem more plausible when you find out she invited all of her friends, including Reggie, and Dilton, who just sat there reading, as if he only came there to be polite. If she had only invited Sabrina's family like a thought, that would have been confusing. Little Archie, issue 148, The Magic Mirror. Hilda gets told by a magic mirror that she's the prettiest, and Sabrina tells him off for lying when that's the smart thing for him to do. I like the way this magic mirror looks more than the Snow White mirror because he's got an actual head. Following up on the fact that he said he had a tough life, he actually explains what that was. Predictably, he does tell the story of Snow White, wasting candles on us. Snow White gave the mirror to the dwarves. I like getting to see this what happened after Snow White thing. One of them wonders if a magic mirror does tricks, somehow, and another asks if they have to watch to see it. The mirror calls one of the dwarves a joke and gets thrown out and spends months in a dump. Why would she give it to the dwarves? Wouldn't she realize this would happen because he's used to looking at someone pretty? He would have been less lonely if he just stayed polite to stay with the dwarves. Solitary confinement wreaks havoc on a person, so that would have been smarter. Somehow he wasn't affected by it. Since the last time he was honest with someone about how ugly they were, he suffered for it. It makes perfect sense that he lied to a witch that she's pretty. It's surprisingly creative that the witch wasn't Hilda. She took the mirror home to a house with Hansel and Gretel. The witch already knows their names, and because the mirror read the story of Hansel and Gretel, he knew to warn the kids not to go into the oven called a sauna. So, these kids are only called Hansel and Gretel by coincidence, and the witch is doing this to recreate the stories she read off screen. It's confusing to see a witch be like this in Sabrina where they're like people. But there are pretty deranged people, so it is realistic that at least one witch would be like this. It's just off-putting to suddenly see a story go back on portraying them in a more human way. Even the kids are frustratingly fine with him being kicked out because they're being bribed with candy. And that's when the mirror met Hilda. Sabrina tells the mirror to let Hilda down easy, being so in love with honesty that she doesn't learn a bit from his story that he's better off lying. This is the kind of thing where he'd tell her no in one panel, not the kind of thing that would cause a whole plot. Naturally, he doesn't know how to let Hilda down easy, and tells her that one other person who has Hilda's beauty and face style is Miss Grundy. The story ends with him in what I guess is an inexplicably purple trash can. Well, witches can change something's color. Since witches think ugly is pretty, why would Hilda be offended at being compared to the beauty of Miss Grundy? Sabrina says that at least she didn't break him into pieces. That was very lucky. Despite the story focusing on someone other than Sabrina, it was actually a little interesting. It gave a backstory to the mirror in Snow White, even if it's clearly not good enough because it doesn't tell you who made the mirror. I guess the Queen did. What I mean is it tells you what happened to the mirror in Snow White. It was lazy of the story to rip off Hansel and Gretel too. I was looking forward to what new things would happen to him after he got picked up by that first witch and got disappointed. But it was more interesting than Hilda finding him immediately. And it's frustrating that after everything he told Sabrina, proving that he's better off humoring people because there's nothing to be gained in calling them ugly, Sabrina tells him to be honest with Hilda anyways, for no reason, when clearly insulting her isn't the right thing to do and won't improve things. Little Archie issue 149 in the bag. After the first page wastes comic space, the story starts out with the implausible idea that Jughead forgot his lunch for school, when his only personality is that he's obsessed with food and making you hungry. Uncharacteristically, while the bully doesn't let him have his lunch, he at least apologizes, giving a polite reason for why he can't help him. Sabrina feels sorry for Jughead, while Betty calls him out on exaggerating instead of being nicer. Rather than just summoning him lunch, Sabrina summons a magic lunch bag with lots to eat, casting the spell in front of people without anyone reacting to what she said. She offers him a bag, and he assumes she's making fun of him too, and says he wants something better to eat. That was kind of funny. Surprisingly, he says his favorite food is chicken when everyone knows he mentions burgers more than anything. Somehow the bag has a living chicken in it at first, and he doesn't even question it when she says that magic got away from her. The other kids smell Jughead's fried chicken, onion rings, and burgers, and of course he summoned more food than he needed. Jughead smartly says that maybe his friends would like to buy some of his food. It's unusual of them to ever consider giving some of his food away. Miss Beasley hears some noise and finds out that Jughead's selling all kinds of food for cheaper, and for no reason. This causes her to quit, even though there's no evidence that Jughead will be doing this every day. She should have been written to see what he was selling and then go take a break if she doesn't have what he's selling. Doesn't she get a wage regardless of whether the kids buy cafeteria food? Weatherby says he wants everything out of here now. Sabrina casts a spell to make the bag go away in front of everyone with no consequences, even though they should have heard her cast the spell. I guess the spell being in bold and italicized means they couldn't hear her. But then she should have had a thought bubble and not had her mouth open to make that clear. The story ends with them still hungry. This story is about Jughead inexplicably forgetting his lunch, when it would make more sense if his mother forgot to pack his lunch, but even that's hard to believe. It'd make more sense if the bully stole his lunch, and that was his problem. Sabrina somehow decides that's a good idea to leave him unsupervised with a bag that can give him as much cooked food as he wants. At least it's creative that's a bag and not a genie's lamp. But you'd think she'd simply zap him up some lunch. Conveniently, nobody says Sabrina's a witch for giving him this bag or starts wondering how it's possible and just gets excited about it. But I've already established that everyone probably already knows by now and has learned to play dumb. Beasley somehow quits because Jughead somehow starts selling his food instead of wanting to eat it all. So Weatherby gets mad instead of being glad he doesn't have to pay someone anymore.